Behind the net, centers, Glenn, finds to Clark, shot, rebound, score! Scores the game winner at 12 minutes and 1 second of Sunday.
PhillySportsNetwork.com and Wildfire Radio present the O&B Puckcast. This is episode number 45. I'm Isaiah, and I am here with my partners, Chef B and Dan the Flyer fan. Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Good. Hey, before we get into a number recap and some other things, I just have to say thank you to all of our listeners and followers on Twitter. We have eclipsed 1,000 followers, and one of these followers, JV, is in receipt of a O&B Puckcast t-shirt that is on his way, and I just contacted him to let him know that. So we appreciate that, and we'll be going for other milestones, I'm sure, in other ways as the program moves on. I guess I'm delaying, gentlemen, because we've got to talk about the Flyers. There was some big news today with Joel Farabee, their first-round draft pick from last year, signing his entry-level contract. Now, if he were a juniors player, that wouldn't be as big a deal because he could go back to juniors. But he's a college player, which means he's done. He's coming. He's going to be a pro, and he might actually get some Philadelphia Phantom time, or Lehigh Valley Phantom, I should say. We'll talk about that. But before we get in too deep, Dan, why don't you give us some numbers of what's going on with our Philadelphia Flyers?
Well, the Flyers are 36, 32, and 8 through 76 games played. They have 6 left. They have 80 points on the season. They are 16 points out of first place in the Metro, 13 points out of third place held by Pittsburgh, 11 points out of the first wildcard spot held by Carolina, and 8 points out of the second wildcard spot currently held by Montreal. Their playoff odds are less than 1%.
Yeah, I think the word we're looking for is infinitesimal. Yeah, since our last show, they went 2-5. And a recent article, Philly.com, Jake Voracek, is interviewed Chef, and he says the Flyers choked toward the end of this last group of games. And I'm thinking the guy who choked was the guy who was the general manager here, and he had all summer to address a lot of things, and that's probably what really went wrong.
Yeah. A lot of, you look at the especially this last stretch, and I don't know if they just look like a tired team. They look like a really tired team. They were playing on their heads for a long time. They went on a run. Let's face it, the playoffs for this team started like in January when they started this winning streak that they were on, and you just can't maintain that. So I put a little bit on the players too, but on all season with the management too. There were no moves made to support whatever core you thought you had and what core was going to be here. And then at the trade deadline, it didn't make sense, I guess, for them to move anything. For them, I mean, as a fan base, we wanted to see some big changes, but I guess it's all going to happen in the off season.
Yeah, it does look like they just really just gave it their best shot with the changes they made, and it predictably came up short. Before I go to Dan for some other issues, just tonight is a special show that I kind of glossed over it. It's our Flyers Fanfest. And what that means is we have selected 5-6 followers, listeners who are actually going to call in. And tonight like a sports talk radio station. They're just going to come in rapid fire, one after the other, with questions or comments about the team as we wind down. I thought it was the most interactive expression of our appreciation that, you listen to us here at the O&B Puckcast, but that should be coming up directly, as we'll get our first caller probably in about 15 to 20 minutes. But Dan, there's a certain kind of futility that Scott Gordon is going through with this whole thing about, well, I'm not going to play Moran or Talbot until we are mathematically eliminated. So it's like 99.6% is not enough. This is kind of clownish already. I don't really understand what he's doing. I think it would be nice to get some of these guys some regular season action.
Yeah, I have. This is something I've been curious about for quite a few weeks now myself. They really haven't been above, 5% playoff odds in, quite some time now. And now that they, every game they lose, it just goes down a little bit. So there's 6 games left, and they're, less than 1% chance of making the playoffs. I don't get it. I don't know what he's waiting for. Mathematically, I guess they could be eliminated as early as Wednesday. But it's just, he's just waiting for nothing at this point. There's no reason to keep delaying this. It's not like they're going to turn it around. He gave it his fair shot at, fighting back to the playoffs, but it didn't happen. It's time to start assessing for next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Chef, I get that in the old-fashioned sense, Scott Gordon does not want to wave the white flag by playing those guys, because he's the one that put himself in the corner of saying, well, they won't play until we're mathematically eliminated. In other words, they're not good enough to play. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, Elliott, there's no way Elliott is back here with his durability issues. And have you seen Robert Haig play lately? I mean, he's absolutely been horrendous. So, why don't you give up this ship here and, show a little bit more creativity? It certainly would help the fans, tolerate these last 6 games.
Yeah, at this point, I was all for when they were going on their tear, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, kind of thing. And everybody seemed to be stepping up and playing above their abilities for a little bit, for a brief bit anyway, especially the lower players. We're bottom 6 guys or whatever, whatever. And right now, I'm with the whole consensus of let's play. Let's play. I want to see Moran. I want to see him play. I haven't seen him yet. I figured Dan was going to be really happy about all that when I said that. But in all honesty, it's like this. You fix up, and let's treat them like a nice vintage car. You take all this time in the off season to take a year rebuilding them, rehabbing them, and fixing up that beautiful shiny car. But what's the point if it's just going to stay on a flatbed truck? I mean, let's face it. You want to drive the car once in a while, and at this point, you need to get out there and see if that car even runs. So Sam needs to play, and soon. Talbot, I'm not so sure about. I don't have any attachment to Talbot. He to me, he's a backup goalie, and they could be stuff available in the off season for us to look at that, whether it's whoever it is, it doesn't matter at this point. I'm just saying at this point you need to look at Talbot. I mean, you need to look at Sam right now.
Yeah, Sam, I think Talbot is actually a more important player because he trains with Carter Hart in the off season. They both go and consult in the off season with Dustin Schwartz, who's a goalie coach in Edmonton. Both the Flyers and Edmonton could have staff shakeups. Who knows what happens? I think Talbot just has to show a level of competency so he can solve that problem and head into the summer without having to worry about who's going to be their goaltending tandem in going into the summer, because that's the last thing you need is more uncertainty. That's kind of why, Chuck Fletcher made that deal, I would think, Dan.
Yeah, I would imagine so as well. And that's kind of been the baffling thing about Kim Talbot is if he's the guy for next season, why continue to play Elliott? And I've heard the excuse, oh, well, they want to get Elliott a good contract next year by showing him off. Like, that should not be priority number one at all. Priority number one should be seeing what you have on the bench. You know, I get in a way the goaltending, if you don't want to play Cam Talbot because you want to start Hart, fine. But, like, the same thing for Sam Moran. You know, Robert Haig has not been good for quite some time now. There's no reason why you can't throw Moran in there thinking that he's going to do any worse. It's not possible. But, you know, back to the goaltending, it's just, I don't know why you're not assessing the guy. You brought him in, you traded Anthony Stolarz, who was playing very well when they dealt him. You know, he was working well in a tandem himself with Carter Hart. So I don't know what he's thinking here, but I really wish that those two would just get some ice time and at least see what they have. It can't hurt at this point.
You just made a point, too. Yeah. Like, all this started when we traded for Cam Talbot, so maybe I don't want him around anymore.
Well, I mean, the thing about Brian Elliott is I get when he gets on a run, he can be as good as anybody for about 4 or 5 games, and then he'll drop in a clunker. Then he'll play well again for a few less games, and it's like a diminishing returns type situation. And we saw that when he played against Washington. You know, not yesterday, because yesterday's game, he actually wasn't really the problem. But that first game after the first game after our last show, they lost 5-2. He did not have a good game. And at that point, the Flyers over 30 games were like 28-2. But after that, they lose to Toronto, a mess. They blow a 5-2 lead. Then kind of heroically, they play a decent game. I think they were outplayed for the most part, but they beat the Penguins in overtime as they get a late goal, and JVR gets the empty net goal to tie. But yeah, an empty net goal for us. And Coots wins it in overtime. But at Montreal game, they looked like they didn't belong on the same ice. The Habs just were skating all over. And Dan, it's reminiscent of how many times we've seen the Flyers against a certain kind of team that can generate speed through the neutral zone, attack and swarm to the puck, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, why can't the Flyers play like this?
Yeah, the last few games have been a perfect example of just complete frustration for the Flyers in the sense of teams that they're running into that are just systematically better than they are. And, you know, the Flyers have just been pedal to the metal since January, and they're tired. You know, we saw this last year when they fought towards the end of the season and then eventually made the playoffs, and they just got crushed by the Penguins because they were exhausted. We saw it a couple of years back when they played the Rangers in the playoffs. They were exhausted because they fought so hard to make the playoffs in the first place. I think this is a very tired team against teams that are essentially their entire schedule here has been teams that are fighting for a playoff spot of their own. You know, and they're fighting just harder than the Flyers are. It's been a rough stretch of games here for the Flyers.
There's no question. And Shep, is it really the point that they buried themselves early in the year? And what we're seeing in the aggregate is like every team over 80 games, 82 games, they're just not good enough. And we go on Twitter and we get these little battles about, you know, who the Flyers should protect and, you know, this protected list or these guys that you can't trade. And I call them a list of sacred cows. And it's amazing how big these lists are. You can't, and like somebody had Lindblom on there. And I like Lindblom, but I mean, give me a break. G is exiting his prime. It is time to put pedal to the metal and start trying to win here. And that might involve what appear to be painful sacrifices. But, you know, if you're actually in the playoffs and winning rounds, isn't that worth it?
Yeah, I mean, I like we've said before so many times that you're always gonna be afraid of the unknown, especially when but if we trade him, we don't have another guy for this, or we don't have. Well, I look at the bottom of the roster right now, and a couple of I'm not gonna call them diamonds in the rough. I'm gonna a couple of pleasant surprises. Look at what happens when you gave Scott Lawton a chance. He blossomed into a pretty decent penalty killer. He's playing a better second half of the season. The same thing with Lindblom, okay? It doesn't mean that they're not expendable now. It means that they have more trade value. You got to look at the positives of everything. So if you can package something, you'd be crazy not to get another goal scorer on this team, or that second top defenseman that you've been looking for to pair up in here to really solidify the D-line. You'd be silly not to, because as much as what you have on this team right now, let's look at it right now. Look at everything, and I'm sure we're going to get to it, that's coming up next year just to the Phantoms. And there are going to be long shots to make the team out of camp, just like Patrick did, but they are long shots. But here's the thing. You need to not be afraid to make a move, because you're going to be judged the same way you were judged. We judged Hexall. No move is a bad move. Sometimes, even though you might think you're making some horrible mistake in a trade, doesn't matter. At least show the fan base that you're trying.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like you have to go out on a limb and take a ridiculous gamble. I mean, it would be nice if the availability of the unrestricted free agents was such that the Flyers could pluck two guys and just make a trade and lose one or two guys, and hey, they're off to the races, and Eastern Conference Finals, here we come. But that's not the situation. The top guys, Dan, are going to be tough to get. You're going to probably have to overpay. Mark Stone is in Las Vegas, and he's all wrapped up, so he's not an option. So basically, it's Panarin, Carlson, Duchesne is. We talked about him on your show, Brotherly Puck. I think he's not someone I want to spend a lot of money on. So they're going to have to make some trades, but they want to be calculated, and they want to try and build a team that can do something.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be, kind of the biggest issue this summer is you got a few guys, the Panarin and Carlson are going to be obviously the big, what's it called? Big catches, big fishes, whatever you want to call them, the big signings. Mm-hmm. And, they're going to go for a lot of money, no matter who signs them. Flyers, whether they stay in their respective teams or go to Florida, they're going to go for a lot of money, and that's going to be expensive, whether you sign them or, again, somebody like Duchesne, who I don't really care for on the team. But they're going to need to, I think, more or less rely on trades to find some talent this summer. And they have pieces that are expandable both on the team right now and in the system. They can part with a couple picks, they can part with a couple prospects, and still be this big, mighty powerhouse in the future like they want to be. There's no reason, one way or another, why they can't make any moves this summer.
No, not at all. You think about what will be coming on the Phantoms, and Chef alluded to it. They're going to, we talked about Joel Farabee. You might as well get into that a little bit. He bypasses his, I guess it would be his sophomore year at BU. And he's really been terrific in college. It took him a while. It didn't happen right away. But after, I think after the World Junior Championships, his game really took off. And Dan, he has the kind of game where his structure is really good. He's always in the right spot. He plays the game the right way, but he just has to get a little bit stronger. And, I was kind of thinking he would go back to school, but it looks like at the very least he'll be with the Phantoms next year.
Yeah, I was expecting him to go back for another year as well. But, hey, I think, the Phantoms could use some extra firepower themselves from their own team perspective. And, he can come in and he could impress next year, during training camp. And I don't think he's going to be much with the Flyers. I think it's going to be the same for Morgan Frost. They're probably both going to be Phantoms early on. But, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting team. There's going to be chances to them to make the roster. There should be some open spots in the bottom six if they really want to, impress and make it. But overall, I think they're probably going to start with the Phantoms next year.
Yeah, that's likely the case. Farabee had a big close in 21 games. He had 13 goals, 12 assists to end up his freshman season. He was Hockey East Rookie of the Year. And, you saw in his game a contrast, Chef, between him and Frost. Frost is flashy, making fancy plays, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's parts of Farabee's game that aren't really going to change that much. It's just a matter, like Frost, of physical maturity to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, everything I've looked up and researched about him. I mean, like I was, I had the Flyers picking him at 14 this year, and I can't believe, last year, and I can't believe that they, that it actually, I got it right. I saw something in the kid and all the research I did, and I just like the fact that he's getting his chance. He's seeing his chance and taking it. His skill set lends itself to an easier transition than most people today. He doesn't overdo it. He's what we refer to on the show many times as he has a good hockey IQ, and I think that'll lend for a pretty productive future for this kid.
Yeah, there's no doubt that when you think about it, that now that we have Farabee in tow, some of the juniors have signed their entry-level contracts like Frost, Ratcliffe. Strom is a question mark, but he should be with the Phantoms. Frost will be. Ratcliffe, I believe, will be with the Phantoms next year, as well as Felix Sandstrom in goal. Tanner Lazinski is a college player from Ohio State. Dan, he is somebody we talked to with Russ Cohen about, and Russ thinks that Tanner Lazinski, if he had left early, could have played on the Flyers' fourth line right now.
Yeah, I from all I've seen and heard about him, he's going to be good. I know there was some question as to whether he wanted to sign with the Flyers, but now that Hextall's gone, who knows if he's coming here. So I think he's a kid that everything I've seen out of him, he looks really solid, and he probably could have slid right into this Flyers lineup and been just fine.
Yeah, and Wade Allison is kind of like a shoot first winger, and he's somebody else that the Flyers are looking at, but there's no decision with him. Chef, he's a scorer. Now, he had an ACL injury, and he's not the greatest skater, but he's a big, rugged guy with a great shot. He's got the strength. He's got the body to play in the league. Now, he just needs more experience, and this time off from the injury didn't really help him. And there's a question whether he's going to go back for one more year or not. But I do think eventually they will sign him.
Yeah, I think long-term it's kind of like it could have a good outlook for him. He's somebody, like you said, he's got a heck of a shot, and he's probably a good sniper that the Flyers could probably use somewhere down the line. I see him maybe third line, second line topping out, but he's somewhere along the lines where he could be on that wing or anywhere really and get you a good 20, 25 goals a season. And he's gonna eat up some minutes too. He's gonna make it difficult for the other team because he's just a big guy. He can wear you out.
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of possession or anything like that he has going for him, but I know that he is a heavy player. I know people kind of hate that expression in today's game, but he is, and it just remains to be seen whether he's going to sign with the team. And as we talk about these young players, and a lot of people, Dan, are looking forward to Morgan Frost. Some are even predicting that he'll make it. It's just the fact that we're going through all these names, and the Phantoms for the first time are going to be comprised of probably more draft picks and prospects instead of these veterans like Veroni and Carey. For the first time, that I can remember, the Flyers are really going to be loaded. But it makes you it brings us back to a discussion about what we need to do during the summer, and that is to think that we can let go of some of these guys for the immediate benefit.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I mean, you can obviously put them all with the Phantoms and roll with this current team for another year with the addition of a free agent or a trade. But, overall, I'm excited that the Phantoms are going to look good. I just bought a partial season ticket plan on Saturday, so at least I get to see some talent when I go there. But overall, I think the caliber of these players are going to be interesting. I think you can reasonably play them at the NHL level, or you can let them with the Phantoms and really let them excel. So I think they are in a really good situation here to really kind of have their roster fill out any way they really wanted to next year.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And with that, we conclude our segment on what's going on with the Flyers today in our minds. But we have to start what we call Flyers Fanfest. We have our first caller on. Yes, you are on the O&B Puckcast.
Hey, how you doing? This is actually Flyer Rob.
Tell us what's on your mind as a Flyers fan for many, many years.
Right. So, I got on early. I figured I'd wait after Dan get done, but okay. So basically, I want to talk about the youth that's coming up because, we've been not really enjoying the season so much this year in the last few years as we've been, lagging in the mire of the mediocrity. So, I'm not really big on this season so much as I'm big on the future because the future looks so bright. I got to wear shades. So, we got 4 players that are coming up that could all possibly, I know it's a stretch, but all possibly could be on this roster next year. 2 of them are going to be 20 years of age, so they don't have to worry about the contract age requirement for CHL.
Right.
And 2 of them are coming out of college, and one of them already signed a contract this morning. So, coming out of college, that age requirement is not a factor. They can sign an entry-level contract at 19 years of age. So you got the only thing that they all got in common is that they all have to at least fill out their frame a little bit. They're all a little bit small because of their age, but that will happen. Just look at Couturier, just look at Patrick, just look at Konecny. These guys filled out after a while. Even Gostisbehere filled out a little bit. Still kind of skinny, but he did. So you got Frost that will be turning 20 in May, and Frost is basically, if you compare his numbers and his stats, his numbers are very similar to where Claude Giroux was at his age at that time period when he was playing in the Q. So,
why don't we talk about Frost? And we were just going through some of the prospects and all. If you look at Morgan Frost and putting the numbers aside for a second, the thing about Frost, you mentioned it yourself with the strength issue and the way he just got eaten up along the boards in the exhibition games earlier this year. And the other thing is he had what was known as a gliding habit where he would just work up to a certain speed and he wouldn't keep his feet moving. And that's something he had to work on because back pressure at higher levels was catching up to him as far as checking.
Right. And what I think is going to happen is I think, he's going to be like the same way Giroux started. I think he's going to go to the Phantoms and he's going to develop his game a little bit more. He's going to realize it's the next level. It's the next gear. He can't just glide. He's got to be able to work the puck off the boards and stuff like that. So he'll get I think he's going to be like one of those mid-season call-ups, like probably like around November or December or something like that when someone gets hurt. And he's going to probably steal a roster spot from somebody if he gets called up. If not the first time, the second time, because the guy's got really good skill. He's just very good with the puck. So then you got Farabee. Farabee is really good. He did very, very well with Team USA on the World Juniors. He also did very well in the collegiate level. And he should be able to make the team. He'll probably be with the Phantoms too as well for a few months or maybe even the whole season. Imagine this. We got Myers, who's 6'5", and Ratcliffe is 6'5". Can you imagine a breakout stretch pass from our D zone to Ratcliffe as he's breaking, going in on goal with both of their reaches? My goodness, they could be like 1 second in our end, the next second right on top of the other team's goalie, and be such a surprise to the other team. It would be phenomenally awesome to see that happen.
Well, let me just butt in there for look, I like the fact that they're getting some size in their lineup right now, but I'm hearkening back to just the game last week against Montreal. The Flyers' biggest problem right now is their structure doesn't allow them to handle teams that play with pace and swarm the puck the way Montreal did. So, the talent level is going to improve, but they have to play a certain way. And with some of these young guys, it's going to take time. And we were just talking about before you got on that we might have to sacrifice some of these players, and it might be a little painful. But as Claude Giroux leaves his prime, we can't be always 2 years away from being 2 years away.
Right. It's true. We can't always be 2 years away from being 2 years away, and they probably will sacrifice some of them. I think they're going to sacrifice some of the lesser talents. Maybe O'Brien or maybe like Rubsoff or Nicholas Albe-Kubel, NAK, somebody like that. I think they might sacrifice one of those players. But they're not going to sacrifice some of their top core players, especially what they had to give up. When they had to give up Shen, I would be shocked or surprised to see if they gave up Frost and Farabee or either any one of the two, knowing that they gave up Shen to get both of those players.
Yeah, but you know what? That was another GM. That was another era. And with that, Rob, I hate to move on to the next caller, but I think that we're on a tight schedule. Thanks so much,
Sure.
Flyer Rob. Where can people find you on Twitter?
NAA Robert Wilson. I'm at NAA Robert Wilson. I do insurance for a living. NAA's insurance. That's all.
All right, cool. Rob, thanks so much for being a listener and a follower. And hopefully we'll do this again. We had you on before anyway, so definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And with that, all the way from the Great White North is that Mr. Dan Knightley?
Yes, it is. How's it going?
All right. Thanks for calling in. Great to hear from you. Yeah, we had somebody. We got our wires crossed, but we're okay now. So welcome to the O&B.
Fine.
Yeah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast. You're on with Isaiah, Dan, and Chef. What's your comment or question?
Well, thanks for having me on, and I love listening to you guys. So pretty happy about this, and I had something to talk about, but what you guys were talking about in the last segment, I want to piggyback off of that because it kind of goes into what I wanted to talk about. So
sure.
I think when I watch the team, like I'm not as optimistic as other people, as Rob was in the last caller there. But when I watch the team and I see there's a lot of players that we all love, like the Giroux, the Couturier, the Provorov, the Harts. So I want to know what the problem is. Why aren't they good? All the players are up. All the good players, the so-called good players, are here. So why aren't they good? Why are they below average? And what I come to the conclusion is I don't really know if they're ever going to be this good with this group. And I think they have to make tough decisions come this summer, which you just said in the last segment, Isaiah, when you said they have to trade some big pieces that some fans are probably not going to like, but they have to do that to get players. Are they going to have to trade a Frost? Does he have enough clout? Does he have enough value to get a good player, a top 4D, top 2D, top 6 winger? I think they have to go the trade route of he's very popular and it's going to suck to do it, but a Gostisbehere, a Voracek, they have to make those decisions because what I watch, I'm not really sure if this group, without adding any pieces, is going to get the job done. Can they really flip the switch from this year to come October? Are they going to be a legit contender just like that? I have my doubts.
Yeah, I mean, I said on Twitter today and for a couple of times, for a while, really, it's been a near decade of futility. In 2012, they went out after winning one round. And that was a temporary thrown together team with Yager and all that. But since then, what have they done? Every other year, practically not making the playoffs. And when they do make it, they barely make it. They're one and done. They're not going anywhere. What are you hanging on to? I mean, we've got a new general manager. It's time to hit some grand slams. And to do that, if you look at the UFA market, it's not really that fertile. You have Carlson, who has his own injury concerns. It's going to make a lot of money. You have Panarin, who really is the gem, the prize. And I'm not really that, crazy about Duchesne. So it would seem obvious if they're going to have to make a trade and maybe trade some futures if they want to get out of this muck and mire of mediocrity.
Yeah, the summer of 2007, by signing these free agents, that's over. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, it doesn't. To have this magic off season where you have Chemo and Hartnell, and then you trade him a first round pick, and hey, that was great. But I think right now, I think the Flyers' first round pick should be in play. I think a guy like Ratcliffe could be in play. And if you get a chance and you can sign a guy like Trouba to a contract and you want to trade Ghost over to Winnipeg, or maybe you want to try and get Spurgeon, I'm a little bit wary of his age. But, well, Dan, before I get too far into that, we're on to the next caller. I want to thank you so much for listening and following the O&B Puckcast, and hopefully we can do this again. Any final comments?
I would love to. I just keep doing what you're doing. I enjoy talking to you guys on Twitter. It's tough to talk about Flyers sometimes, but it's enjoyable with the good people of Twitter there.
I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.
All right. You take care now.
You too. Bye.
Bye. And with that, our next caller is Mike Aceto.
Hey, Isaiah, how you doing tonight?
Hey, doing okay. Mike, you are on with the O&B Puckcast with Dan and Chef. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, thanks a lot for having me, guys. I really appreciate it tonight. This is a lot of fun. I wanted to get into some of the off-season outlook with you guys. I know there's probably been some chatter in the past on it, but I think I have a plan for the Flyers, and I want to see what you guys think about it.
Shoot.
So I think that my theme for the offseason here with them is that it's plan A, plan A, plan A. There's really no settling for plan B or plan C anymore, because we've seen the stopgap and depth player days for the past 5, 6, 7 years, and that has to be over. And fortunately for us as fans, we hopefully get to see something pretty exciting. On the positive side, this offseason is one of the most lucrative we've seen in many years in terms of who's available. It's very ripe for the Flyers to take advantage of it across the board, coaching and player-wise. But on the flip side of that, conversely, I think the market is so rich, but there's just way too much for one GM to do in one offseason. And I see 4 main areas that Fletcher needs to really hit here. And a lot of these are really no secret. First is the coaching staff, and I think they have to get Coach Q. I don't think there's an option here for them. I mean, we all like what Scott Gordon has done so far, but they're really at a pivot point in the organizational history and require a real difference-making coach rather than a guy like Gordon, who might be good at keeping things held together, but probably can't really push a team over to excellence.
Right.
Where do you guys stand on the coaching situation as we head in the off season?
Well, they need a new coach. The guy they have is to me is an AHL coach who did a really good job of helping bring along some guys and reasserting the belief that the players had in themselves, guys like Lindblom and Sandheim and also Provorov. But they need to hit a home run at the coaching level, because we were talking with Dan Knightley, who was on before you, and he brought up a good point, like how are they going to get out of this situation? And we talked about personnel, but as we were hanging up with Dan, I was thinking, hey, we got to talk about the coach. The problem is the Flyers structure and puck management since the Laviolette days, the good Laviolette days, has been wretched. That has to change. You look at the way Montreal came in here and just dominated. They had their guys swarming to the puck, and they were all in the right spot, and they had the kind of speed the Flyers don't have, and the Flyers just really were no match. So that starts to me with coaching first, for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think that they need an organizational reset really on how they operate and how they play. And I think that that's not a knee-jerk reaction or a knee-jerk observation here. I mean, we've seen this team basically have the same identity and narrative for God knows how many years now, where it's they fall into a hole and then they try to dig themselves out, and they do it on a micro level in most games, and they do it on a macro level every single season. So I think we've seen enough to understand that you need an alpha coach to come in here that knows exactly what he's doing and knows where to take this ship. And that's why I don't think you can settle for less than Q. And I think it comes down to, this is the executives here. I mean, you're not going to get any of the players are going to convince Coach Q. This is something that Chuck Fletcher, Dave Scott, Paul Holmgren, Brent Flair, and maybe even Bobby Clark need to figure out a way at the executive level to convince this guy, kind of drawing a parallel to what the Phillies did with Bryce Harper. I mean, that was coordinated by John Middleton. He was a critical player in that as the team owner, getting a guy of that caliber in here. And I think the same thing has to be done with the Flyers front office to be able to woo in a guy like Coach Q.
No, I agree. I think the driver behind that whole thing with Q was Dave Scott. And you know what? He was right. When we had an opportunity, and it was never considered by what's his name, Hextall, to get a guy like Barry Trotz. Look what a difference. The worst structure team in the league last year was the Islanders. You get the right coach in here, and look what happens. So, Mike, with that, we got to let you go. But thank you so much for listening and being on, and calling in, the O&B Puckcast, and hopefully we can do this again.
That sounds great. Thanks a lot for having me, guys. Look forward to it.
Great. Appreciate that. Now you take care.
All right,
Isaiah.
see ya. Bye.
Yep. Take care.
Isaiah, I have one little tidbit on that. My fear is this. I'm all for getting Q, and I think it's a great idea. And I think that what is the fail safe? Do we have another year of Gordon if we don't get Q? What if Q finds that maybe this team or there are other opportunities where he could have more say in personnel and all that stuff? Because a lot of personnel is locked up and in place here. So I mean, what do we do then if it's Q? Is it another year of Gordon?
Well, listen, no, it can't be, A or B. It's not a dualistic scenario. To me, it's the type of situation where you need something different, fundamentally different. So, McClellan is the only guy who was able to do anything with that wretched Edmonton squad. He's a damn good coach. And I think his reputation was sullied by the association with Chiarelli, the Shia Pet, the horrible GM. And I think and I would also look at some of the new guys, the new breed guys like Sheldon Keefe. People talk about Todd Nelson. Hey, I'm open for it. I just think Gordon's an AHL coach. And with that, we have to go with our schedule. Our next caller is Jeremy. Jeremy, is that Cout?
That's correct.
Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the O&B Puckcast. You're on with Chef and Dan.
Thanks, guys. How you guys doing?
All right. What's on your mind about the Flyers?
So yeah, let's start off. You guys are awesome. I listen to you guys a lot. It's pretty cool to be a part of this. This is probably the longest season I can remember. This is crazy. Everything that's gone down, ups and downs, coaching changes, GM change, new players, old players, saying goodbye to guys that we've wanted to say goodbye to for a while. But the one constant, my constant, has been Sean Couturier since day one, really, honestly. This is his 8th season with us already. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that is
crazy. It feels like yesterday. But like, you look at this guy, right? This is a guy who up until last season, he never had more than 40 points in a season. Never. Okay. And then, you see G moves to wing, which paves the way for Coots to kind of, to slide into that top center spot. And I still, like, even today, I see John Bourque post and stuff. You get these people who just, for whatever reason, maybe it's because he's not the flashiest guy in the world, or they just still don't think he's legit. So this is my case for the Sean Couturier, the 1C Sean Couturier. Goes from never having 40 points in a season, right, to last year going I think it was at 76 points or whatever. He's got back-to-back 30-goal, 40-assist seasons,
right? And
he's doing that honestly with probably some of the toughest minutes in the entire league. Look at the division, right? You have guys like Crosby, Malkin with the Penguins. You have Panarin over there with the Blue Jackets. Look at the Capitals. Good luck, Ovechkin and those guys.
Right. Yeah.
So each night he's matching up against these top lines, and then you look at what he's doing. Ted Brown had tweeted that his Twitter handle, that guy 11920.
Oh yeah,
Ted Brown tweeted,
our buddy Ted. Yeah.
He's a good dude. He had tweeted goals above replacement amongst the forwards from 2017 to 2019, and number one on that list, Sean Couturier.
Wow.
Above guys like McDavid, above Claude Giroux, above Mark Stone, Brayden Point. There's a list of guys here that are elite. Sean Couturier is never mentioned in an elite category, especially offensively. And I think it's time that his defense speaks for itself. I think the guy's going to win Selke trophies. Probably not again this year because of the team not being that well, playing that well. But you look at what he's done. His offense is all of a sudden he's an elite offensive contributor. You know, he's probably the Flyers' best two-way center since Rod Brindamore. Honestly, he's better than Mike Richards. And I know a lot of people are gonna be pissed off by that one. But,
no, he is. Let me just.
No, he's right.
No, you're right. And let me augment that, because he's still getting zone starts that are in the neighborhood of 55% in the D zone. Not only that, if you want to go deep in the numbers, if you look at one of my favorite stats that to me just kind of smokes out what's real and what's not, it's possession quality and expected goals for and against. Now, Pete Bergeron, the difference, his possession plus minus was like in like 20, but that's like in a hint. That's like Alpha Centauri incredible. Bergeron's nowhere near that right now. Right now, though, that Sean Couturier is like averaging the last 2 years like 10% greater expected goals for. And if you really give that some thought, that measures the quality of his shots. That is excellent.
Yeah. Well, I break it down. I like to look at it a couple different ways. One, you look at his even strength points, okay, over the past 2 seasons, since he's really taken off, right? And he's 9th in the league in even strength points with 118 points. Guys above him, McDavid, Kucherov, Kane, those kind of guys. But he's got 1 game played more than Crosby, and he has more points than Crosby in even strength play. That's a kid. That's you're talking about a guy. You're like when people talk about elite offense, you look at Crosby, right? That's for the past decade. That's been the judge of elite offense.
Right.
Here's Couturier at the even strength. He's better at even strength over the past 2 seasons. You know, and nobody mentions his offense. You know, it's always he's so good defensively. He does this, he does that. There's another a pretty cool, interesting stat. Was his value, right? So when you look at his value, it's a combination of a bunch of like his time of play, power play, shorthanded, his even strength guard, his power play guard, shorthand guard, all that stuff, right? And he's 3rd in value over the past 2 seasons. Past 2 seasons. Only players better than him in those are Connor McDavid and Mark Stone. You're talking about most value garnered in a season, and he's 3rd. He's above Brad Marchand, who's one of the top players, even though he's a pest. He's one of the top players in the league. Kucherov, Barkov, Pasternak, Hedman, Crosby. He's ahead of all these elite level guys, and people just love to hate on him because he is not flashy. That's it. He doesn't do anything. There's no like pizzazz to his game. He goes, he wins board battles, he shuts down guys, and he creates offense. You mentioned his zone start. I did a couple weeks ago. I looked into it, and I could not find a single player who had the same amount of defensive zone starts. He had 45% offensive zone starts. Okay, 45%. That means the rest of his stuff neutral zone defense. Most of it's defensive zone. So 45%, and he was a point per game player over that stretch. And you look at guys like you hear a guy like Mark Stone. Mark Stone's almost 60% offensive zone starts. Okay, Bergeron 56 or 57% offensive zone starts. He's 12% zone starts, defensively. That's a big number. Now, it's not the bread and butter of it all, but that just kind of shows you that this is a guy who starts in his own zone, and then has the ability to shut down opposing top elite level guys and still be an absolute offensive force. And honestly, I think it all starts with his D, and then it goes from there.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, he gets his offense from his defense. Jeremy, the hole in his game is he doesn't have translatable skill to power play. He's got to be close to the net. He doesn't have that deadly shot where you got to take away a certain area of the ice like you would with Stone, Marchand, or something like that. Yeah. And he doesn't play with a lot of pace. But listen, I mean, if you put that kind of player with him, like you put a Panarin with Couturier, that's like a force multiplier. And with that, Jeremy, we got to wrap it up because we have our next caller.
You guys.
Thank you for calling in and following and listening to the O&B Puckcast. Hopefully we can do this again.
Absolutely.
Jeremy, thank you. Take care now.
Take care.
And with that, we are joined by another innocent caller who's never talked to us before, and that's not right. Nah. We have an old friend. He's like a ringer tonight. Here's our old buddy, Kevin Fortier. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Hey, guys. I just want to say mega dittos, longtime listener, longtime fan. It's great to be back with you guys. Hey, what's going on?
Terrific.
Missed you, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not much. It's just this is show number 45, and you were kind of like with us near the beginning, and then we just, you know us, man. We went big time. We got Russ Cohen, and we had Bill Meltzer and Kevin Woodley, and we had our noses up in the air. That's all Chef's fault. It was all his idea.
Well, you guys have
Sounds
done
like
a
me.
phenomenal job. I mean, it's an honor to say I was there from the start. I lost my podcast virginity to you guys, so it's been quite a journey.
Oh, was that? Oh, I got this little cherry in the corner. Is that what that is? Huh?
Yes, that wasn't Don Cherry.
So no, but what's look? This has been a disappointing season, and what we don't even want to talk. Like, they got 6 games remaining. We were just ragging on Gordon for not like give up the ghost already. I mean, they got the chances of them making the playoffs are like 0.00002%. Let's just see Moran. Let's see Talbot. And like, but he has backed himself into a corner where he feels like if he does that, he's waving the white flag. It's so stupid. It's like what you would expect from it, like a hint AHL coach.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, they've got to give Moran a chance. It's another season gone by without the kid playing, a single game during that season. They got to see what they have in him so that they know to either, stay with him and give him a shot next year, make some room for him, or just move on. So I agree. I think it's crazy at this point. I mean, the thing that I'm just so excited about is the emergence of Phil Myers. I have loved this kid since, the Flyers invited him to camp after that summer where, he had a lot of back issues. He didn't end up getting drafted. He had miserable stats in his draft season, which was 2015. He had 8 points and was minus 14. But the Flyers saw a lot of raw talent in him, and they took a chance. They signed him, and then he went out the very next season and scored 17 goals, 45 points, and put up league best plus 52, and was on the highest rated defense pairing in the QMJHL that season. So to see this kid, come up through the ranks, follow, along, kind of like Sanheim and Morin have both done. He's a year younger than Sanheim, but I think he's already on par with Sanheim in most of his game, and he's certainly better defensively than Sanheim is. I think he's got the best defensive stick of any of the Flyers defenders at this point. He's second defensively behind Provorov. I mean, the kid's just phenomenal. He's such an impressive skater. You've seen, his instincts, where he can drive into the net like Sanheim does. He has kind of the same move where the way they come in on along the boards on one side and then cut in and shoot the puck on net. He's got great passing skills, and he's a right-handed defenseman, which the Flyers have desperately needed.
Yeah.
He's bulked up.
Yeah.
He's 6'5". They say he's somewhere between 220, 225 right now. I think this kid is just going to be a top all-around defenseman. He'll end up on the top pairing with Provy going forward, and it's been so exciting to see this kid playing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Dan, did you get to see Phil Myers when you went to a couple Phantoms games before he got called up?
I did not. No, he got recalled a couple days actually before I went to my first game of the season.
Yeah. When he was with Lehigh, I should say. In 48 games, he had 29 points, including 9 goals and 20 assists. And he struggled a little bit with his reads and stuff like that. I think the Flyers waited the perfect amount of time to bring him up and to let him avoid that cluster frack that was the latter era of Dave Hackstall and that whole thing. It's looking back, he was totally befuddled at the end, and I think Rick Wilson deserves a little bit of credit, Kevin, for kind of turning some of these guys loose. I think that was one good move that Fletcher made from the coaching perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was so disappointed that he looked out of sorts in camp this year. I mean, he almost made the camp. He almost made the Flyers in his after his D+1 season. He was
Right.
the last guy, cut. It came down like he and Provy were the two D kids. We knew Provy was going to make it, and Morin was the last kid there. And then he made it to the, he was playing on the top pair in the Canadian team in the World Juniors, and then Cunnin, had that horrible shot to the head.
Yeah, I remember that.
Concussion.
Yeah.
And then in his first year with the Phantoms, he had a bunch of injuries. He just was not ready. And even though he looked better last spring with the Phantoms and in the playoffs, he seemed to kind of regress. And now when he came up, he just gelled, instantly. As soon as, they brought him up, like you said, it was the absolute perfect time. And he didn't have that slump. He didn't struggle like Sanheim did last year when he first came up. He just fit right in, and, when he's playing 15 and a half minutes a night.
Yeah. And Chef, you look at a guy like Myers, and not to belabor the point, but the way his game is, he was right at that point where he needed to play in a better league with better players that would bring out his talent. And I think that's exactly what happened with him.
Oh, absolutely. I think that at some point, like, when you get stale, as I often draw parallels in my work environment as a chef. You kind of get like, you got to always be good. Looking for something to help you push you to the next level, and working with stagnant creative people sometimes does that to you. And it's the same thing for, like when you're playing hockey. If you're going and you're seeing the same kind of crew all over again, and you're kind of like better than everybody else, and he's a little bit better, and he was a little bit better than everybody else, it kind of stifles you. Like you can't grow in an environment like that. You need to be challenged in order to get better. And I think that's what we're seeing from him. I mean, we knew it was there. We saw it, pieces here and there. And I just think now on a more consistent basis, the best thing about it is he's in an environment now where he's not going to get punished if he makes mistakes, because at least Gordon's the coach, is familiar with him and can like tell you what his limitations are and probably what his expectations are from him too at the same time.
Yeah. You know what? As we close things out tonight, I want to hit a really tough question that's very germane right now. A lot of fans are making your lists. I talked about it earlier, of players that they absolutely want to keep, guys that are untouchable. Well, I'm going to hit this topic. It's going to really touch off a nerve with some people, but I have to do it. It comes to mind, so I'm going to do it. The Flyers' top four right now: Provorov, Sanheim, Myers, Gostisbehere. I'm going to take this around the panel. Dan, start with you. Who's untouchable among those four?
Provorov and Myers.
Kevin.
Yeah, Provorov and Myers.
Chef.
Provorov and Sanheim.
All right. Wow. I don't know how I break that. Should I break the tie, or should I make it even?
Tough.
Boy, it is tough. I think,
but I will say this: out of all four you just mentioned, I'm most likely to trade Gostisbehere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all agree on that.
I think he's odd man out, and and that's why it's so important, I think, to get Sam playing, because once Sam starts playing, you can find out if in the off season that you're ready to move on and use Ghost for that big trade that we keep talking about.
Yeah, I mean I agree, but that said, I see Sam as a 6'7" guy, a replacement for Haig or McDonald. I think McDonald gets bought out, but yeah, I guess I since I asked the question, I got to take a position. If boy,
let me throw this out.
Yeah.
If even though I think that Myers is better than Sanheim, he's the only guy other than Gudis that's a right-handed player. If you get rid of him, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Gudis, right? They don't have anybody else in the system right now that is going to be playing anytime in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Unless they trade for him. Unless they trade for a Spurgeon.
Unless they trade for him, yeah.
Or they trade for Parayko. Parayko, to me, is the ideal, but I don't think he's going to be available. So then you look at a guy like Spurgeon or Trouba, who we talked about earlier with some other callers, and Trouba for Ghost would seem to fit the needs of both Winnipeg salary-wise and the Flyers in terms of a minute-munching guy who's a little bit more of a defensive player.
I like that. That. That's a good deal.
Yeah, Trouba's an RFA. He's going to get paid, but if they can work it out, that might be the way to go. They're going to try for Carlson, even though I'm kind of against it because I'm worried that he's always hurt and he's going to make a lot of money. I mean, I love Erik Carlson, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same guy from a couple of years ago. So we'll have to see. Wow. Gentlemen, we just finished the.
So what's your answer?
What is my answer? Who's untouchable? Boy, you weren't gonna let me go on that one.
No, you got to say it. You may not do it. It's like picking a favorite kid. You're not supposed to do it, but you got to.
What is this, Sophie's Choice? Oh God. Yeah. Here's my answer. Nobody's untouchable. I want to win. I want to win.
Cop out.
And I am going to do whatever it takes to get the best players. That's it. I'm sorry for the echo tonight. We're getting some echo. Somebody's got a little problem with their phone, but there are very few sacred cows. And if the right deal came along and the Flyers got Alex Pietrangelo, and we got Tarasenko. I don't think these things are going to happen, but I'm just saying. And they wanted Provorov and, I don't know, TK. I don't know. Would you do that? I'd hesitate, but the Flyers are stuck in the mud for, like I said, almost a decade. I don't want to be a hypocrite on the other side. It's time for the Flyers to take off the sacred cow status of most of this roster. I'm not saying
you've been saying that for a while, and I agree. I mean, you've been calling to break up the core, get some new blood in there, and I think this season has proved you right on that aspect.
They're going nowhere. It's almost a decade. I could use some not so nice descriptions of what they're doing, but I don't know what to say. They're like the Flyers are like Pee Wee Herman in the back of the theater. Let's put it that way. And it's time to stop. Okay? It really is. That's why Fletcher's here. So let me leave it at that. So, Kevin, are you writing these days for anybody?
Well, I'm working on an article right now. I started it back before I got the plague.
You got that bad sinus, yeah.
I'm just getting back into it, but basically it's looking at Myers, Sanheim, and Morin, and kind of the progression of the Flyers, recent big defensive kids, how they've, gone from the draft through making it up to the Flyers.
Dan, a Flyer fan, you are a very busy man. You're busy over at Brotherly Puck and Brotherly Pod. Where can people find your stuff?
You can find me on Twitter at DanleyFlyerFan. You can find the site at Brotherly Puck, brotherlypuck.com. You want to listen to the podcast at Brotherly_pod. Isaiah was on last week.
Yes.
New Angry Negative show on Wednesday night. And yeah, we always have something going on over there.
Fantastic. Chef, you are over at Steam Pub, and you're not podcasting, you're actually a chef.
Yes, that's what I do. And you can find me at 606 2nd Street Pike, Southampton, PA, restaurant Steam Pub. If you come in and mention the podcast, guess what? I'll give you like 20% off. How about that?
Wow, fantastic.
So wait, you're actually a chef? Is that where that nickname came from?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for real.
It's not a gimmick? Wow.
No.
Everybody
All
thinks
this
it is.
time, you didn't know that?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
Hey,
God.
just look-
You must have heard that on one of the other shows. Everybody
Yeah.
says that to me.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to thank you guys for letting me join. It's been a lot of fun. Brought back a lot of good memories here, laughing with you guys the last couple of minutes here.
Oh yeah. No, it's all fun, and we'll definitely do this again. But I have a special announcement to make. Because of the Flyers, I think are going to be in a state of flux. We normally would have come back to talk to you in 2 weeks, but I think the Flyers are going to hesitate a little bit, and we are going to wait until Tax Day, April 15th, to come back with our show. But don't worry, we have a dynamite guest, top shelf. He's clued in, he's plugged in. He'll give us all the dirt and the details, and the Flyers decide about Gordon and what they're going to do going forward. They'll probably have a press conference. We'll have all of that for you. And the person that we're going to have as a guest will have covered that and have spoken with the particulars. So we're really happy about that. But until then, the Flyers have 6 games left. Hopefully we'll see Moran, Talbot. It'll be a little fun, and then it's over. And it's time for the summer, and we'll get ready for that with our next show. So with that, just a reminder, the O&B Puckcast is on 6 podcast formats, and the most important are the ones that you listen to. But for us, if you could rate and subscribe with iTunes, it really helps the show. We appreciate that. And we're also on SoundCloud, TuneIn, you see else it's Stitcher, Google Play. And if Liam's in the mood, we're on YouTube with PhillySportsNetwork.com. And we're always, of course, on WildfireRadio.com, where they play our stream on Wednesdays. So anyway, until next show, everybody, let's go Flyers. And until next time, take care.